Aku, Natania Imanina Matram. Sebagian orang mungkin menganggap aku hanya orang yang beruntung. Tapi percayalah, aku pun perlu berjuang dengan hebat. Sebuah kebanggaan bagiku dapat meneruskan sejarah kecil keluargaku dengan lulus dari salah satu universitas terbaik di Indonesia seperti keluargaku lainnya. Dan tentunya, terima kasih kepada Bapak dan Mama yang selalu menjadi penyemangat dan pendukung nomor satuku. Aku sadar betul bahwa menghadapi dunia ini perlu persiapan yang luar biasa. Jadi, aku hanya berniat membagi apa yang kupunya, karena aku yakin pendidikan apapun bentuknya bisa membuka berbagai jendela kesempatan untuk mereka. Tahun 2018 yang lalu, aku bersama kakakku, Nasya Matram, menjalankan Rumah Belajar Mawar. Rumah belajar ini gratis untuk anak-anak yang kurang mampu. Materi yang diajarkan adalah matematika dan bahasa Inggris untuk murid sekolah dasar. Anak-anak belajar dari pagi hingga sore hari, tiap akhir pekan, didampingi oleh relawan pengajar. Tapi sayangnya, kegiatan belajar bersama ini harus diberhentikan sementara, menunggu situasi kembali kondusif. Percayalah, aku hanya mencoba untuk bersyukur atas apa yang kupunya. Siapa tahu, kelak dunia bisa menjadi lebih baik di tangan mereka, bukan? Karena kita yakin, pada setiap pengorbanan, selalu ada kebahagiaan yang tak tergantikan.
semakin maju, dunia bisnis juga terus mengalami perkembangan dan persaingan yang ketat. Sudah siapkah Anda menghadapinya? Faktanya, di dunia bisnis, nilai sebuah perusahaan tidak hanya dipandang dari profit dan loss-nya saja. Hal yang sebenarnya yang paling penting adalah perusahaan dapat mengetahui seberapa besar value dari bisnisnya. Ini akan menentukan pertumbuhan dan keberlanjutan bisnisnya di masa depan, sehingga dapat memudahkan suatu bisnis atau perusahaan mendapatkan sebuah kepercayaan dari para investor. Memahami bisnis valuation juga hal yang sangat penting bagi seorang akuntan dan akuntan publik. Karena akuntan dan akuntan publik memiliki peran yang penting dalam membuat laporan keuangan dan memahami value dari sebuah bisnis. Memahami bisnis valuation juga merupakan nilai tambah seorang akuntan dan akuntan publik. Jika kamu ingin memahami bisnis valuation, kamu harus mengikuti program yang satu ini. Namanya CVP. Jadi tunggu apa lagi? Persiapkan skillmu dari sekarang. Jangan sampai kamu tertinggal dengan yang lain. Jadilah trusted professional.
Mau meningkatkan karir, kompetensi di bidang perpajakan, atau sedang mencari pekerjaan yang sesuai keinginan? Sekarang nggak perlu bingung lagi, karena semuanya bisa kamu dapatkan di brevet pajak A dan B IAPI. Kenapa sih kamu harus pilih brevet pajak IAPI? Berikut alasannya. Brevet pajak IAPI disupport oleh para praktisi perpajakan dan akuntan publik yang sangat berpengalaman. Kelasnya online via Zoom, bisa diakses dari mana saja. Materi yang dibagikan up to date dan sertifikatnya juga diterbitkan oleh IAPI. Brevet pajak IAPI dapat diikuti oleh berbagai kalangan loh, mulai dari mahasiswa, akuntan profesional, akuntan publik, dan umum. Banyak banget manfaat yang bisa kamu dapatkan, seperti meningkatkan karir, meningkatkan kompetensi dalam memperkuat jasa perpajakan, mempersiapkan diri dalam menghadapi ujian sertifikasi profesi CPA, USKP, dan lain-lain. Mempersiapkan akuntan publik yang akan bekerja sama dengan DJP. Meningkatkan kompetensi peserta dalam bidang perpajakan. Jadi, tunggu apa lagi? Segera daftar brevet pajak A dan B IAPI sekarang juga. Daftarnya di
Selamat datang dalam panduan mengikuti CPA Indonesia Academy. Pertama-tama, buka laptop kamu. Mohon maaf, dibuka, bukan dibongkar. Kemudian nyalakan dan buka browser kamu. Buka link dat.ly/cpa-academy-spap. Setelah dialihkan ke Google Form, isi biodata. Harap gunakan biodata asli. Masukkan email dan nomor handphone. Cukup nomornya saja. Jangan lupa upload bukti bayar. Mohon maaf, bukti pembayaran paket CPA Indonesia Academy bukan tagihan listrik. Login di halaman LMS dengan username dan password yang telah dikirimkan pada email Anda. Setelah berhasil login, kamu bisa lihat paket materi yang telah berhasil dibayarkan. Selamat, kamu sudah dapat menikmati kemudahan belajar CPA Indonesia Academy melalui LMS. Kamu bisa akses lagi istirahat makan siang, minum kopi, bersantai, dan lain-lain. Selamat mencoba! Kapan lagi investasi 200.000 dapat 7 topik audit dari pembicara yang expert di bidangnya?
saatnya melangkah ke depan. Ikut menjadi bagian tonggak sejarah profesi akuntan publik. Menantang diri untuk menjadi yang terdepan. Masa depan kita yang menentukan.
Aku, Natania Imanina Matram. Sebagian orang mungkin menganggap aku hanya orang yang beruntung. Tapi percayalah, aku pun perlu berjuang dengan hebat. Sebuah kebanggaan bagiku dapat meneruskan sejarah kecil keluargaku dengan lulus dari salah satu universitas terbaik di Indonesia seperti keluargaku lainnya. Dan tentunya, terima kasih kepada Bapak dan Mama yang selalu menjadi penyemangat dan pendukung nomor satuku. Aku sadar betul bahwa menghadapi dunia ini perlu persiapan yang luar biasa. Jadi, aku hanya berniat membagi apa yang kupunya, karena aku yakin pendidikan apapun bentuknya bisa membuka berbagai jendela kesempatan untuk mereka. Tahun 2018 yang lalu, aku bersama kakakku, Nasya Matram, menjalankan Rumah Belajar Mawar. Rumah belajar ini gratis untuk anak-anak yang kurang mampu. Materi yang diajarkan adalah matematika dan bahasa Inggris untuk murid sekolah dasar. Anak-anak belajar dari pagi hingga sore hari, tiap akhir pekan, didampingi oleh relawan pengajar. Tapi sayangnya, kegiatan belajar bersama ini harus diberhentikan sementara, menunggu situasi kembali kondusif. Percayalah, aku hanya mencoba untuk bersyukur atas apa yang kupunya. Siapa tahu, kelak dunia bisa menjadi lebih baik di tangan mereka, bukan? Karena kita yakin, pada setiap pengorbanan, selalu ada kebahagiaan yang tak tergantikan.
semakin maju, dunia bisnis juga terus mengalami perkembangan dan persaingan yang ketat. Sudah siapkah Anda menghadapinya? Faktanya, di dunia bisnis, nilai sebuah perusahaan tidak hanya dipandang dari profit dan loss-nya saja. Hal yang sebenarnya yang paling penting adalah perusahaan dapat mengetahui seberapa besar value dari bisnisnya. Ini akan menentukan pertumbuhan dan keberlanjutan bisnisnya di masa depan, sehingga dapat memudahkan suatu bisnis atau perusahaan mendapatkan sebuah kepercayaan dari para investor. Memahami bisnis valuation juga hal yang sangat penting bagi seorang akuntan dan akuntan publik. Karena akuntan dan akuntan publik memiliki peran yang penting dalam membuat laporan keuangan dan memahami value dari sebuah bisnis. Memahami bisnis valuation juga merupakan nilai tambah seorang akuntan dan akuntan publik. Jika kamu ingin memahami bisnis valuation, kamu harus mengikuti program yang satu ini. Namanya CVP. Jadi tunggu apa lagi? Persiapkan skillmu dari sekarang. Jangan sampai kamu tertinggal dengan yang lain. Jadilah trusted professional.
Mau meningkatkan karir, kompetensi di bidang perpajakan, atau sedang mencari pekerjaan yang sesuai keinginan? Sekarang nggak perlu bingung lagi, karena semuanya bisa kamu dapatkan di brevet pajak A dan B IAPI. Kenapa sih kamu harus pilih brevet pajak IAPI? Berikut alasannya. Brevet pajak IAPI disupport oleh para praktisi perpajakan dan angkutan publik yang sangat berpengalaman. Kelasnya online via Zoom, bisa diakses dari mana saja. Materi yang dibagikan up to date dan sertifikatnya juga diterbitkan oleh IAPI. Brevet pajak IAPI dapat diikuti oleh berbagai kalangan loh, mulai dari mahasiswa, akuntan profesional, akuntan publik, dan umum. Banyak banget manfaat yang bisa kamu dapatkan, seperti meningkatkan karir, meningkatkan kompetensi dalam memperkuat jasa perpajakan, mempersiapkan diri dalam menghadapi ujian sertifikasi profesi CPA, USKP, dan lain-lain. Mempersiapkan akuntan publik yang akan bekerja sama dengan DJP. Meningkatkan kompetensi peserta dalam bidang perpajakan. Jadi, tunggu apa lagi? Segera daftar brevet pajak A dan B IAPI sekarang juga. Daftarnya di
that lately our country, Indonesia, like other countries of the whole world, is experiencing the escalation of the COVID-19 pandemic with other new variants. And with deep sorrow, we have just got bad news. Our respectful Chairman of IAPI, Bapak Suhartono, two of the board committee members, Bapak Sinaraharja dan Bapak Agus, and also senior member of ACCA had passed away. We all members of IAPI condole over the loss of our board management. So before beginning with our webinar, let us first observe a moment of silence in honor of the deceased. Okay, let us start with the moment of silence. Okay, moment of the silence finish. Thank you for attention. Okay, for the next, first of all, I would like to express my thankfulness for all of the support that have been given to this program. So this program can be arranged successful, dedicated to Mr. Denny Purhadianto, SAMSD ACCA CA Australia, Executive Director Institute Akuntan Publik Indonesia, and Mrs. Hani Karunia MBA MSc, Head of ACCA Indonesia. And thanks also to moderators, speakers, and all panelists, the Honorable Ms. Jenny Note, co-founder Fintech Strategic Advisors and Independent NED, and Mr. Denny Purhadianto, and also Ibu Hani Karunia, Head of ACCA Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, this program is arranged by the cooperation between IAPI and SCCA. Dan juga kami tidak lupa untuk mengucapkan selamat bergabung kepada Bapak dan Ibu peserta yang telah hadir di dalam Joint Webinar IAPI ACCA. Before we start, izinkan saya untuk menginformasikan promo CBV selama webinar ini berlangsung. Baik Bapak dan Ibu peserta semua, pada sore hari ini, IAPI masih memberikan promo eksklusif hanya bagi peserta webinar sore hari ini yang mendaftar dan membayar langsung untuk CBV ini. Oke, jadi Bapak dan Ibu akan mendapatkan diskon sebesar Rp100.000 di dalam CBV batch 3. Jadi Bapak dan Ibu hanya dengan menginvestasikan 3.300.000 dari harga normal kami yaitu 3.400.000, Bapak dan Ibu telah dapat meningkatkan kompetensinya di dalam bidang penilaian bisnis CBV. Dan ini adalah salah satu program yang diadakan oleh IAPI dan ACCA. Pembayaran dapat dilakukan melalui rekening Bank Mandiri cabang Melawai dengan nomor rekening 1220099016951 atas nama Institut Akuntan Publik Indonesia. Promo ini hanya berlaku selama acara webinar berlangsung. Bagi peserta yang sudah membayar, mohon melakukan pendaftaran melalui link yang sudah tertera di dalam layar Bapak dan Ibu, dan juga para peserta untuk melakukan konfirmasi melalui WhatsApp di CS kami di 0812-9287-8707, lalu di CS2 di 0811-8402-405. Baik, okay, next, ladies and gentlemen, we will inform you about condition for participant to participate in joint webinar in Bahasa Indonesia. Baik, syarat dan ketentuan peserta untuk mengikuti webinar sore hari ini. Yang pertama, selama presentasi materi, peserta Joint Webinar IAPI ACCA melalui YouTube dapat menyampaikan pertanyaannya melalui link yang sudah tertera di layar Bapak dan Ibu dengan menggunakan format nama peserta, strip perguruan tinggi, strip universitas, strip instansi, strip KAP, dan sesi tanya jawab akan diadakan setelah pemateri selesai menyampaikan materinya dan akan memilih pertanyaan yang telah terkumpul. Baik, yang kedua, selama pelaksanaan joint webinar ini, kami atau saya MC akan membacakan 3 kata kunci yang akan dirangkai menjadi kalimat kunci dengan contoh. Pada pukul 15.30 penggalan kalimat kunci yang pertama adalah join. Pada pukul 17 nanti akan ada kalimat kunci yang kedua, lalu selanjutnya ada kalimat kunci yang ketiga. Maka kalimat kunci pada hari ini adalah Joint Webinar on CBV. Selanjutnya, materi Joint Webinar IAPI ACCA melalui YouTube dapat diunduh melalui link yang telah tertera di layar Bapak dan Ibu, dan juga kami informasikan bahwa Bapak dan Ibu, materi akan dapat di-download setelah pemateri memberikan materinya, yaitu setelah selesai acara webinar ini. Oke, for the next, ladies and gentlemen, baiklah, sebelum dimulai webinar hari ini, kami mohon perkenaan dari Bapak Denny Purhadianto selaku Direktur Eksekutif IAPI untuk memberikan sambutannya. Baik, kepada Bapak Denny Purhadianto, kami persilahkan.
Oke, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning to Jenny, good evening here for everyone in Indonesia. Thank you very much for being able to attend this fun event. And also, this is a happy moment for us in IAPI because we are finally start discussing the new world of crypto asset or intangible asset or cryptocurrency. And this is the way for IAPI to show to you, to its member, to the people out there that Institut Akuntan Publik Indonesia also cares for the future. And I think this is a very good moment that IAPI could be considering of doing this more often, because now government Indonesia already approved the trading to Bapepti, Badan Penyelenggara Perdagangan Berjangka, those so-called crypto asset and cryptocurrencies. And I think the next step is that Indonesian government will open the trading of the cryptocurrency or crypto asset. So without further ado, I would like to greet to our esteemed speaker, Ms. Jenny Knott. I think we can get a lot of
Would you like me to introduce myself?
Hi, Jenny. I think the flowing Miss Asri. Would you like Jenny to introduce herself?
Okay.
Thank you.
Ibu, no problem. Please, Miss Jenny.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jennifer Knott. I am a global investment banker. I worked for 35 years in global investment banking. I became a member of the ACCA in 1989, and I'm a fellow. I'm very proud of my professional qualification. I think it has been a very valuable passport in my career. I became a CEO of a bank, of a global bank, in the middle of 2014, I think. I can't remember now, 13 or 14. And I also specialize in market infrastructure. My passion is financial technology. I'm a non-executive director of many boards, and I have written a book on cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technology, which I think is transformative for financial services. And I'm delighted to join you today. So thank you very much for inviting me. And I hope this will be very useful for you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Miss Jenny. Okay, for the next, saya mengundang Ibu Hani Karunia, Head of ACCA Indonesia, untuk memberikan sambutannya pada sore hari ini. Baik, waktu dan tempat kami persilahkan kepada Ibu Hani Karunia.
Ya, terima kasih Mbak Asri. Can you hear my voice? Okay.
Yes, Bu Hani.
Okay, great. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera dan selamat sore, dan terima kasih telah bergabung bersama kami di acara hari ini. Terima kasih atas kesempatan untuk berbicara pada acara co-branding sertifikat kami yang ketiga kalinya bersama IAPI. Dan especially thanks to our partner IAPI atau Institut Akuntan Publik Indonesia dan semua executive leadership tim IAPI, terutama special thanks to Bapak Denny Pur Hadianto selaku Executive Director dan timnya yang telah kompak sejak perjalanan ide dari awal sampai terselenggaranya acara hari ini. Terima kasih atas kepercayaannya, serta telah memberi saya kesempatan kembali untuk membuka acara atas nama ACCA atau Association of Chartered Certified of Accountants di Indonesia. Dan untuk nanti pada sesi menjelang akhir ada Q&A, saya juga berperan sebagai moderator sebelum acara ditutup ya. Tujuan ACCA adalah menjadi terdepan bersama partner kami dalam mengembangkan profesi akuntan yang dibutuhkan dunia sambil tetap setia pada nilai-nilai inclusion, integritas, dan inovasi yang telah lama kami pegang. Partnership dengan IAPI juga berawal dengan kesamaan visi kami untuk membangun profesi akuntansi di Indonesia, dan hari ini kami bersyukur dapat mewujudkan langkah secara berkesinambungan hingga dapat menyelenggarakannya sampai ketiga kalinya yang ditandai dengan biasanya dengan launching pembukaan batch itu ada webinar ya, untuk kali ini adalah yang ketiga kalinya. Sedangkan tema co-branding sertifikat kali ini berawal dari pemahaman kolektif bahwa untuk memperoleh atau menjual bisnis, melakukan perencanaan pajak, menyiapkan laporan keuangan, berinvestasi dalam saham, ataupun membeli rumah Anda sendiri, keputusan keuangan akan didukung oleh penilaian atau valuation, tetapi berbagai metode dan pendekatan penilaian yang digunakan secara global seringkali sangat rumit atau mungkin sulit ya. Banyak bisnis internasional untuk memahami nilai sebenarnya dari aset dan untuk mempercayai angka-angkanya, apalagi yang menyangkut aset-aset digital. Untuk itu, kami merasa sangat penting bagi para akuntan untuk paling tidak memahami seperangkat standar teknis valuasi yang kuat yang bisa menjelaskan bagaimana menilai berbagai jenis aset untuk tujuan yang berbeda. Ini bisa dimulai dari bagaimana penilaian dilakukan, lalu progres ke tingkat analisis rinci yang diperlukan untuk tujuan yang berbeda, dan apa isi minimum yang harus dicantumkan di valuation report atau laporan penilaian tersebut. Akhir kata, semoga kerjasama dan acara kita hari ini bisa diambil manfaatnya untuk kalangan akuntan ataupun profesional dalam bisnis secara luas. Dan mohon maaf sebelumnya bila ada kekurangan dari kami dan tim panitia. And special thanks to Ms. Jenny Not as well for her time and valuable expertise sharing atau transfer knowledge for today. And before I say goodbye, saya juga ingin mengucapkan terima kasih kembali pada para peserta atau audiens yang sudah setia selalu stay tune terhadap acara-acara co-branding kami. Dan seperti yang sebelumnya sudah diungkapkan oleh Ms. Asri juga, banyak sekali kita kehilangan valuable members dan juga partner. Salah satunya sih kalau dari sisi ada salah satu senior member kami, Pak Jono Kusmo. Mohon doanya juga untuk salah satu student kami yang bekerja di Gojek ya, Mbak Willis, yang saya dengar juga she's trying to fight for her life sekarang karena COVID juga. Semoga beliau juga cepat sembuh seperti sedia kala ya. Terima kasih semuanya, stay safe please ya. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih Bu Hani atas sambutannya. Baik, selanjutnya. Baik, Bapak dan Ibu semua, ladies and gentlemen, selanjutnya kita akan menyimak dari pemaparan materi seputar CBV dan akan dilanjutkan dengan sesi diskusi atau sesi tanya jawab yang akan disampaikan oleh para panelis kita hari ini. Okay, before we start, I will read CV moderator, Ibu Hani Karunia. Baik, Ibu Hani Karunia. Hani was joining SSC Indonesia from a center where she was the country lead for people mobility service. Hani brings wealth of experience in business development, customer service, and sales, including marketing in a number of a sector. She has her accounting bachelor degree from University Airlangga and began her career at KPMG. She has left and worked in both Indonesia and the US, where she has lived for over 10 years when she attained her double degree in MBA and MSc, and got some years of working experience in education recruitment at US institution. As head of SCA Indonesia, Bu Hani also the chief representative to SCA representative office in Indonesia on compliance matter, and she enjoys cooking, playing with the children, include traveling. Okay, next I will read the CV speaker from the Jenny note. Okay. Ms. Jenny Not is both a board-level investment banker with over 30 years experience, as well as a leading innovator in financial technology. And Jenny holds a number of board roles for purpose-led business, including the British Business Bank, Simply Head, Grissom Technology, OCA, as well as being an advisory to Equida, Chemco, Cobalt, Be the Business, and the VCIB. And then Jenny is a co-founder of the FinTech Strategy Advisors, assisting clients with their FinTech investment and adoption strategy, and then supporting startup to achieve scale and commercial success. And then Jenny believes in the stakeholder capitalism and support the World Economic Forum Sustainable Capitalists and ESG outcome as being must for a successful business to thrive and survive. Jenny acts as the mentor and advisor to a number of CEO and is a frequent public speaker on emerging fintech as well as the commercial benefit of truly innovative and inclusive board and corporate cultures. Okay, for the second speaker, Mr. Denny Purhadianto. Pak Denny Purhadianto, Direktur Eksekutif IAPI, Sarjana Akuntansi Universitas Erlangga, Magister Akuntansi Universitas Erlangga, untuk experience, Head of Indonesia Institute of Chartered Accountant England and Wales dari tahun 2015 sampai 2019, Direktur Komunikasi, Pemasaran dan Pengembangan Bisnis Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia 2007 sampai 2015, dan Direktur Pendidikan Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia 2007 sampai 2013. Okay, this time for the Mrs. Jenny share about the material. Okay, Miss Jenny, please. Hello, Miss Jenny.
Yes, I'm here. So you have my slides.
Okay.
Yes, you have my slides.
Yes, I see your slide.
Okay. Okay. Super. Okay. So I'm going to do a brief introduction to what we call crypto or digital currencies as a digital asset and the challenges that we're finding in the valuation thereof. So next slide, please. Thank you. So I think it's very important to understand we use a lot of these terms interchangeably. So the term digital or crypto asset is an umbrella description for all digital coins and crypto tokens. So when we refer to digital assets or crypto assets, we don't just mean currencies and coins, we also mean tokens, and they're used interchangeably, but they're very different instruments. So today we are focusing on digital and crypto coins, which we really now have started to refer to as just digital currencies. And crypto tokens are more of a security-like instrument. So I'm not focusing today. Today is about digital currencies. So I'm not talking about crypto tokens or digital tokens or any security-like instrument. I'm focusing on digital currency. And I think it's very important, before we talk about the challenges of valuation, to actually understand the basic concepts and properties of digital currencies. And in order to do that, we must first remind ourselves of some of the basic definitions of money itself. Next slide, please. Thank you so much. So there are three main types, as it's evolved, of money. The original main use of money was commodity money. So this is where the value of the currency was underpinned by some physical asset. Historically, that was gold or silver. And the USA, America, like the United Kingdom, used a gold standard right up until the 1970s. So currency was underpinned by gold held in a central bank reserve. And so there was a fundamental value to that currency underpinned by gold. And then the American government broke that relationship between the US dollar and gold, and it was last fixed at $35 per ounce. Why did they do that? Because the supply of gold grows very slowly. It is finite, and it's only increases as they mine it. And the US government couldn't issue as much new money as they wanted to meet their spending and inflation aspirations. And so what they did is just broke that relationship completely out of the blue. So no gold standard, no relationship between the currency and gold meant they could print unlimited amounts of money. So they terminated this relationship in what we call commodity money. And then countries like the United Kingdom followed thereafter. So what happened? So they created a concept effectively called fiat currency. And this is legal tender where the value is only backed by the government that has issued it. So that's its only value. They issue a fiat decree and simply stating that the currency has value, it has worth. So the US dollar, the euro, sterling, many other major world currencies are in fact just fiat currencies, and their value is purely underpinned by the strength of the government that issues it. There is no central reserve of gold or silver that supports that value. So that's what we refer to commonly in our world now as fiat currency. And then more recently, we've seen the emergence of crypto or digital currency. A technical definition that I use of cryptocurrency it could be accepted as the decentralized and encrypted digital money. And this is really giving a nod to the technology on which it's based, decentralized and encrypted technology. We call it DLT and blockchain, but for now that will suffice. This presentation isn't about the underpinning technology, which is also very interesting. And so it's used to explain the creation of monetary value and units that verify the transfer of these units, and they're stored on the blockchain. And there are many types of digital currency that have emerged. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the main types, I mean, most people will have heard of Bitcoin or Ethereum or Ripple or Litecoin. Their purpose is to act like money over the internet as a unit of account and a store of value and a medium of transfer. And we'll explore some of these terms in a moment. Like physical fiat currencies, they have no intrinsic value. Fiat currency, unlike commodity money, has no intrinsic value. You are just trusting the government, and they're not generally backed by anything tangible. Therefore, in reality, they're only worth what people are willing to pay. Today, many cryptocurrencies operate independently of government and central banks. And we like the idea, I like the idea of cryptocurrencies as a unit of account and a payment method, helping to remove the friction from the foreign exchange and payments world that we experience today. But that's not the purpose behind many crypto coins. I challenge the store of value motive, i.e. that you buy it as an investment and the value, one hopes, goes up and often down. And for me, that's a very uncomfortable concept with an insecure and unsecured digital currency. Next slide, please. The other main type of digital currency is what we refer to as a stable coin. To me, this could be considered a happy medium, somewhere between commodity money, which has a real value, and how that has evolved into fiat currency, and a digital currency that actually has some sense of value by pegging it to an underlying asset. It could be a fiat currency, it could be pegged to a dollar or sterling or another major currency, or it could be pegged to a physical commodity like gold. The Caribbeans have been doing this for a time with their BIT digital standard. Also, there's Tether and lots of others are emerging. So what does that really mean? Does it mean you can go to a bank and exchange one real US dollar for one stable coin? Well, that's a theory. It's not really working that way yet. And it doesn't mean that the commodity value doesn't have value. And there isn't certainly a green US dollar sitting in a vault to support a stable coin. So there is still an element of trust in the issuer and the provider of the currency. But what we are seeing in the last 3 or 4 years, and certainly a huge increase in the last 12, 18 months, is that central banks are now really considering the merits and experimenting with digital currencies. When I first started talking about digital currencies 5 years ago, the central bank in the UK, headed by the governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney, was not particularly impressed with this idea of a digital currency. But I now have heard Mark Carney's podcast on the merits of digital currency. And he himself is now a huge supporter of digital currencies. In fact, he now talks about how they are becoming purpose-led currencies or behavioural currencies. So, for example, we're seeing experiments in the use of a digital currency, but with a restricted permission. So that, for example, you could transfer some digital currency to a niece or a nephew or a child, and you could say this mustn't be used for the purpose of alcohol, or it mustn't be used for the purpose of sweets. So there are behavioural permissions being built in the protocols of these emerging digital currencies. So that's very exciting, I think, as we see it emerging. But the key point of this side is that central banks are really now considering digital currencies and linking them to their central bank currencies. And this is sort of a development in the stable coin. Next slide, please. Thank you. So just to quickly recap, we've learned so far that a commodity currency is linked to a real asset like gold. A fiat currency has no intrinsic value. That digital currencies and digital assets refer to all of the crypto coins and security tokens, as well as currencies. And that a digital currency itself acts like money over the internet as a unit of account, a store of value, and a medium of transfer. They have no intrinsic value. And stable coins are crypto coins where the value is linked or underpinned to another asset, such as dollars. So recapping all of that, we can now move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. Properties of fiat money versus cryptocurrencies. I suspect for the rest of my life, we will hear this debate. And there are many that are completely pro and many that are against. So I suspect this debate will run for some time as to the relative value and merits of cryptocurrencies versus fiat. Supporters of this new digital world will put forward many emotional as well as practical arguments as to the benefits of cryptocurrencies versus fiat. And the cynical conventionalists will always argue the reverse. We have tried to consolidate this into a simple table, which I'll cover in a moment, that lists the properties of both fiat and cryptocurrency. I'm not going to argue the case one is better than the other. I think in our world today, there is a value to both existing side by side. And I certainly believe that we have seen an acceleration of the use of, even just in the fiat world, technology embracing digitization of currency. So in COVID, in times, we have seen the use of real cash being a danger to health, and people using their Apple Pay, etc. So without realizing, they're already moving to a digitized version of their own fiat currency and trusting the infrastructure does its job. So there's already been an acceleration through COVID of the embracing and jumping ahead of digitization of fiat currency. It's not that difficult then to consider the next evolution. In our view, in my personal view, as a mechanism for payment and a medium of exchange, cryptocurrencies are here to stay. Which one of us has not queued up in a coffee bar where someone has used their phone to pay? For my children, and I'm sure everybody else who's grown up as a millennial, the gold standard is just something they read in a textbook. It doesn't mean anything. And my children grew up in an era of the financial crisis, and they don't particularly trust governments or the banking sector as their trusted elders that are responsible with managing the world's finances. Rather, they have grown up in a world where money, fiat money, is digital. So whether it's digital sterling or digital dollar or digital Bitcoin, they don't really care. As long as it buys what they need it to buy and they can use it in a frictionless way, it doesn't really matter. And they don't really trust the governments more or less than they trust the issuers of new currencies. So it's very interesting for that generation who are far more embracing of digital capabilities. I certainly don't really subscribe to cryptocurrencies as an investment class, as a store of value. For me, there are no fundamentals to support the capital appreciation and depreciation. I analogize it to a children's fable in English culture, which is called The Emperor's New Clothes. I don't know how well known that is around the globe, but basically the story is of an emperor who has a tailor. He doesn't like his clothes, and a tailor is called to the court to make him an outfit. And everything the tailor shows the emperor rejects. And in the end, the tailor says, well, I've made a very special outfit for you. And only very special people can see this outfit. And it's invisible, but if you're gifted, you can see it. So the emperor wears this special outfit, which is, of course, nothing. So he parades naked in the streets, and everybody has to pretend that they've seen the outfit or they're not good people. And I feel some way that believing that a digital currency that has no intrinsic value and has just been issued under an internet protocol is the emperor's new clothes, is pretend. And I find the concept that they're finite in the quantity issued, yet they can be divided and they can fall, because they did with Bitcoin Night. I find that very uncomfortable. So to me, there is a useful purpose of digital currencies for payments and transfer of value. I find the idea that you would invest in something that's completely can be challenged in that way, something that I personally am not comfortable with. But that's, as I said earlier, that's personal opinion. And I'm sure I'll be proved wrong over time. So let's have a little look at the critical properties, if in the next slide, please. So the critical properties of what we call fiat money versus crypto. So when we are looking at the definition of money and fiat money, we have to argue that it is divisible. We need to pay for things in larger amounts and smaller amounts. So it has to be divisible. It has to be durable. It has to be fungible. You know, if I give you some currency and somebody else gives you some currency and you pay me back, I have to believe that the currency you're giving me back is a version that I gave you. So it has to be fungible and portable. Those are the three most important aspects. And from a cryptocurrency perspective, or digital currency, that is held true. Digital currencies can be divisible. They are durable. They exist as a ledger entry, and the protocol and transparency of the ledger will authenticate the transfer and the existence. So we won't go too much into all of that today, but through that consensus mechanism, they are durable. They are fungible and portable. They're also verifiable and recognizable. And again, that's through blockchain consensus. They can be made limited and scarce, like gold. They can be decentralized. No government or political manipulation. They're not exposed to that. So that's a property that's even more valuable in some ways than fiat currency. They cannot be easily counterfeited depending on the protocol of the consensus mechanism. So they are able to be transferred peer-to-peer. They can be anonymous. That's not always a good thing. There are risk issues with that, what we call know your client. You know, do you know where the source of this money has come from, the source of wealth? Was it obtained in an appropriate way? What has it been previously used for purposes that are not supported by your government? Is it transparent? So again, cryptocurrencies are transparent. This is where I think it gets interesting. So they are trusted depending on the protocol and the issuer. But they are also programmable, which gives rise to lots and lots of exciting potential use cases. But if the protocol is risky or weak, and the wallet architecture in which they're stored then actually there can be a lot of fraud, and that undermines confidence in the whole digital currency concept, but not necessarily fairly against the currency itself. It's more that the protocols around wallet storage and others were not sufficiently robust. Crypto coins are very easy to buy and sell. They have very low transaction fees. If you try and transfer US dollars across the globe, it can be very expensive. Clearly, bit is much cheaper, and they have a very important property, which is about immutability. So it cannot be undone. People cannot manipulate the past, which I think is a very important concept for trust and endurance. Okay, so we've done a whistle-stop tour of digital currencies and their relationship to fiat and commodity. The key challenge now is, how do we look at these instruments and think about them from a valuation perspective? What I've tried to do is emphasize that they are sort of like any other asset. You need to understand, when you're considering them on your balance sheet, what your purpose was. Are you holding them as an investment? Are you holding them as a trading asset? You'll see from my fellow presenters later that we can dive into this in some detail, and I won't do that now. But what I want to do is just make sure we don't lose sight of the big questions. So the purpose or the motive for that asset, is it for investment or trading purposes? Like any other asset, we should consider fair value. Is it more appropriate to mark to a model or mark to market? Are we using IFRS 9 or IFRS 13? And for me, it's, I try and make these things and try and keep them very simple. In IFRS 13, the key definition of fair value is the price that would be received to sell an asset or pay to transfer a liability in an orderly transaction between participants at the measurement date. Very simple. And an orderly allows for all of the challenges that we have in financial services around liquidity, the size of the transfer, with whom you're transferring, etc., etc. So it does allow you to do post-model adjustments and adjustments to your mark-to-market, add-ons, etc., that would cover liquidity. But we mustn't lose sight of these key questions. Next slide, please. So valuation, as I said, is like any other asset. Bitcoin, why wouldn't you value it in the same way you would value gold or precious metals? Stable coins, why would you not value those in any other way that you would value FX or NDFs, any other FX asset? And all the altcoins, to me, are trying to be tokens. So we would go off into the world of equity and unlisted equity and private equity and the complexities associated with that. But I'm not focusing on that today. It's really around whether or not we would want to create something new or just make it an extension of what we're doing today. And my view is that both unsecured digital currencies are more like a Bitcoin, are more akin to commodity valuations, and stable coins are more aligned with sort of FX. So I see no reason for moving away from the existing accounting principles for this new asset class and trying to reinvent the wheel. So my view is, next slide, please. I'm so sorry. So my view is that crypto is definitely here to stay. It's largely similar. We've seen it's largely similar to existing asset classes. Fiat has no intrinsic value. It's about trust. Stable coins are based on commodities, so therefore there's an underlying value. So I would argue that the existing asset class accounting rules and regulations form the basis for how we need to think about digital currencies and digital assets in their entirety. And that's it from me. I look forward to receiving questions at the appropriate time at the end of the session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Miss Jenny, for the question and answer. For the next, we will start Pak Denny Purhadianto. untuk memberikan atau memaparkan materinya pada sore hari ini, baik kepada Pak Denny Puhardianto, Eksekutif Director IAPI, waktu dan tempat kami persilahkan.
Oke, terima kasih Asri. Bapak Ibu sekalian, izinkan saya menggunakan bahasa campuran antara Inggris dan Indonesia. Jenny, please allow me to speak in both language whenever appropriate, in English and Indonesia. So, following Jenny's presentation before that, my presentation now is more focusing on the accounting and audit side of the so-called crypto asset or cryptocurrency. Next slide, please. And of course, most of the, we call the digital asset here are supported or using blockchain technology. So first of all, I'd like to share with you the key challenges we are facing now, because the thing is here and the transaction is here, and I think many Indonesians are now doing transaction using Bitcoins or altcoins, and I think as a professional we will have this kind of challenges, like skill set of management and other service in providing the service, and also auditors. What are the new skill set that needs to be owned by the professionals, and also governance, regulatory, and risk consideration will be very important challenges in implementing digital asset valuation or accounting and audit. And there is another issue related to income tax, international tax, local taxes, and also internal control and processes. And last but not least is the information systems challenges also, which more of those I will cover in the next following next slides. Next slide, please. So let's start first on the accounting challenges for the digital asset. So for Indonesia, currently we don't have any accounting rules specifically related to cryptocurrencies. And also in other jurisdictions, no new standards issued by FISP or ISP focusing on accounting for digital asset. But ICPA Digital Asset Working Group published accounting for auditing of digital asset in December 2019. It's more like a technical guidance, but not a standard. So yes, we still need to use and implement, of course, with a lot of professional judgment on the existing standard itself, on how to recognize, measure, present, and disclose this digital asset. And also other jurisdictions like FISP, IASP, and ICPA, there are forms, research studies, and working groups. And also, I think MIA, Malaysian Institute of Accountants, also have this working group also. Next slide, please. So, in relation with classification and measurement when an entity purchases crypto assets, there are things that I think we should consider before we start to recognize it. We should consider whether it meets the definition of assets. So within the generally accepted accounting principle, crypto asset generally will not meet the definition of other asset classes within generally accepted accounting principle. And therefore, accounting for them as other than intangible asset may not be appropriate. For instance, crypto asset will not meet the definition of cash or cash equivalents as defined in the FISP statement when they are not considered legal for tender and are not backed by sovereign government. In addition, these crypto assets typically do not have a maturity date and have traditionally experienced significant price volatility. Of course, we know that recently, many of central banks in many jurisdictions, including Indonesia, they are considering of issuing a so-called central bank digital currency. The other thing is that crypto asset will not be financial instruments or financial assets if they are not cash or an ownership interest in an entity, and if they don't represent a contractual right to receive cash or another financial instrument. As we see that if you are a crypto enthusiast, we can see the battle between SEC, the US SEC and Ripple to determine whether Ripple or XRP, the digital asset called XRP, is actually a currency or securities. And although this crypto asset may be held for sale in the ordinary course of business, they are not tangible assets and therefore may not meet the definition of inventory. So an entity should determine whether this is an intangible asset and whether this intangible asset has a finite or indefinite life. So if the entity considers this as this digital asset has indefinite life, then they have to gradually do the impairment test of the asset. Next slide, please. So recognition in initial measurement when an entity receives digital assets that are classified as indefinite life intangible asset, that an entity will treat the receipt of the digital asset as form of non-cash consideration when determining the transaction price. Entities will apply all aspects of the transaction in the scope of that test. To determine the transaction price for the revenue contract, entity would measure the non-cash consideration, that is, the date that all criteria is met, and also have to do the entity have to do the estimation of the fair value in the contract inception. So the entity will apply the relevant accounting guidance for the form of non-cash transfer and must determine how any change in fair value of the digital assets will be recognized after contract inception. And at initial recognition, most of the entities will consider recognize it at cost. Next, please. So an indefinite life, because it's we cannot tell its useful life, then it's not subject to amortization. Rather, it should be tested for impairment annually, or more even frequently, because as the previous speakers state that this is very volatile asset. So the entity who holds or owns the intangible or digital asset should do impairment test as frequent as possible. So, and if the impairment indicator state that an asset lost its value, then immediately the entity has to record a loss of the impairment. And this loss also give effect to the carrying amount of the asset. Next, please. So, measurement of cost basis of digital asset that are classified as indefinite-lived intangible asset is that entities should track the cost or subsequent carrying value of units of digital asset they obtain at different times and use this value for each unit of digital asset upon the recognition when they sell or exchange digital asset for other goods or services. It may not be possible to identify which specific units of digital assets were sold or transferred in certain cases. For instance, it may be clear that number of units of digital asset has gone down. For instance, from 10 units to 9 units in the entity's wallet, but not whether the first, last, or some other unit purchase was the one sold. And an entity may apply the guidance in these circumstances by developing a reasonable and rational methodology for identifying which units of digital asset were sold and apply it consistently. And the entity may use the maybe the first in or first out method as one of the reasonable and rational approach to measure the digital asset transfer. Next, please. Next slide, please. So, entity can always transfer or sell its digital asset. They can exchanging them by for fiat currencies, in which case the seller or the entity who own the digital asset should assess whether the transaction is with a customer. If the counterparty is a customer that is selling digital asset, is an activity that constitutes part of the entity's ongoing major or central operation, an entity should account for the sale and present the sale as revenue when control of the digital asset so has transferred. But if the counterparty is not a customer, then that is the selling of digital asset is not part of the entity's ongoing major or central operation, then entity should account the sale as an other income. Gains and losses from the recognition of non-financial asset under FASB SC 845, and it should present the net outside the revenue. Next, please. So, the digital assets should be recognized on the financial statements of the entity that has control over digital asset. So everything has to be recognized, everything has to be measured and presented. And the digital assets should be based, the presentation and the measurements should be based on the specific facts that circumstances of the agreement between the depositor and custodian and applicable laws and regulation. So if you hold your asset or if an entity holds an asset using a third-party hosted wallet service, then an entity should decide whether it has control or not. And also should consider the form of the agreement between the depositor and the custodian may vary, but often will be included within the terms and conditions. So you can store your digital asset in the wallet or digital currency in your personal wallet, or you can put it into custodian. So for instance, many exchange place that can be used to hold your asset. In Indonesia, we have like Indodex or Toko Crypto. you buy your digital asset there, and you can store it there in the application of Indotex or Toko Crypto. Or you can buy there and transfer to your personal wallet. Next, please. So now we are moving to the auditing issues of the digital currency or digital asset. So some extract from the ICPA, this slide extract from the ICPA proposed statement on auditing standards, audit evidence discussed at the ISB meeting in January 13 to 16 in 2020. Some key issues is relating on the electronic information that may provide a central location from which the auditor may obtain audit evidence. For example, a record maintained in a distributed ledger, such as blockchain, may include information that is internal or external to the entity, which, among other factors, may affect the auditor's consideration of the reliability of the information in the blockchain. In certain circumstances, the source of information may be a combination of management and external parties. For instance, if an entity develops a distributed ledger to capture transactions, there may be few or many other external parties participating in the transaction and contributing to the information included in the distributed ledger, including the entity itself. Therefore, when considering the source of the distributed ledger, the source is not solely management, but also includes information from external parties. And in such circumstances, professional judgment is heavily used by the auditor to assess the relevance and reliability of the audit evidence. And some electronic information, for example, records maintained on a blockchain, is available on a continuous basis during the audit. In such cases, the challenges for the auditors that auditors may develop procedures using automated tools and techniques to obtain information about transaction in real-time basis. Because if using blockchain, this blockchain contains so many information, and then the auditors have to have the ability to track the information that is stored in the blockchain. Next slide, please. So these are the audit challenges facing by the auditors to audit the digital asset or currency. So auditors have challenges on the risk assessment. It requires to correctly state the risk and to mitigate the risk, such as on the existence matter, completeness, right obligation, and valuation. And also, there will be new challenges on the policies and internal controls of the companies or the clients, and then custody consideration of the asset itself. And also, the auditor have a big challenge in determining reliability of the blockchain itself, because blockchain code is said to be unpenetrable, yet it's programmable. And sometimes we don't know, auditors don't know who create the first chain. And also related to the mining activities, there are so many miners that contribute to the blockchain itself. So that will have a big challenge. That will give big challenge to auditors in assessing the reliability of the blockchain itself. And then the other challenge is the new accounting policies requiring significant judgment, and auditors must fairly assess whether the entity who owns or reports the digital asset have presented fairly enough and also whether the company or the entity have disclosed, have appropriate disclosure of the policies of the digital asset itself. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And also, use of the blockchain may provide centralized audit data. And audit procedures related to data source from the blockchain must address the risk of fraud and error. And this is very tricky. I say because how often people cannot control the system, because the auditor will be relying on the system itself. Sometimes the auditors cannot see what happened in the system in the audit process. And also, auditor must be able to extract data from the blockchain. And I imagine this will have a law and regulation impact if the auditor asks to extract data from the blockchain. And also, auditors must consider the reliability of the data, including assessment of information, technology, and general controls. And also, the auditors need to understand and assess the reliability of the consensus protocol for the specific blockchain. So it is important, for instance, if an entity holds some types of digital currency, it is very important for the auditors to know who's the issuer, which entity produced the currency and the blockchain underlying it. Most importantly, the auditors have to understand the nature of the asset itself by studying the white paper of the white paper normally issued by the creator of the currency. And remember, the entities may using multiple different blockchains. Next slide. And the acceptance of a transaction into reliable blockchains may constitute sufficient appropriate audit evidence for certain financial statements. For certain financial statements assertions, such as the occurrence of the transaction. For example, in a Bitcoin transaction for a product, the transfer of Bitcoin is recorded on the blockchain. However, the auditor may or may not be able to determine the product that was delivered by solely evaluating information on the Bitcoin blockchain. Therefore, recording a transaction in a blockchain may or may not provide sufficient appropriate audit evidence related to the nature of the transaction. In other words, transaction recorded in a blockchain may still be unauthorized, fraudulent, or illegal. That is happening between related parties. Furthermore, many transactions recorded in the finance statements reflect estimated values that differ from historical costs. And auditors will still need to consider and perform audit procedures on management's estimates, even if the underlying transactions are recorded in the blockchain. Next. So, as blockchain technology is more widely adopted, companies and auditors will need to adapt. As entities begin to adopt this technology, care must be taken to ensure the data is being appropriately captured and considered within the financial statement closing process. And data from blockchain must be considered if it contains evidence related to the financial statements. And this is the hard part for the auditors. And auditors must consider disconfirming evidence, whether on or off the blockchain. And companies need to reconsider their internal processes and controls to ensure that all evidence is being captured. Next slide, please. So look as another example, a simple one like this. For instance, we have Bitcoin transaction for a product that transfer Bitcoin is recorded on the blockchain, right? The seller of the product receives Bitcoin as payment for the product. And for the seller, this is the revenue. This is the revenue transaction, and the auditor will be looking for evidence regarding the revenue recognition criteria, as well as the receipt of Bitcoin as payment. If the blockchain, for this transaction, the example, if the blockchain tracks the delivery of the product, then that information needs to fit into the revenue recognition cycle, as it provides evidence of the timing of delivery. The key input into the timing of revenue recognition, and if not, evidence of delivery must be obtained of the blockchain by the auditors. Next slide, please. And digital assets, there are challenges, and some of the challenges are valuation. How does the entity determine and capture the impairment of fair value of digital asset? And then regulation. How does the entity ensure compliance with all laws and regulation, including anti-money laundering law or AML? And tax treatment. How does the entity comply with the tax treatment of various digital asset transactions? And know your customer for auditors. How is the entity collecting and maintaining their KYC database? And security still be an issue. Or how are the private keys and digital assets kept secure? We see a lot of cases happening recently on the loss of the digital asset or digital currency stored in a wallet, third-party wallet. And then for the auditors, the challenge also to define existence. How will the entity prove its ownership of the digital asset? And third-party control has the third-party custodian or trading platform constitute controls to ensure security of digital asset, whether they have control or not. Or if you store your digital asset in third party, whether you have control of it or you don't. That's the auditor must further examine. And also the completeness. How does the entity ensure all transactions are captured and accounted for? So, as a conclusions, digital currency is happening. Regulators start to regulate it, and then some of the jurisdiction allows it, some ban it. We see the latest news that China has banned all Bitcoin mining activities, but in other parts of the world, a state of Florida, Miami, offers the Chinese Bitcoin miners to move their mining operation to Miami. And in Indonesia itself, the Bapepti now facilitate Bitcoin and other digital currency trading. And also we have numerous digital currency issuers. And of course, the latest statement by Indonesian Central Bank, that Indonesian Central Bank will soon issue the central bank digital currency. And it's there. And this is our duty as a professionals, whether we prepare the financial statements or financial reports, or we are the auditors, have to cope with this new change. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih Pak Denny Purhadianto. atas pemaparannya. It's the very interesting material. And the next, we will share atau we will inform you untuk keyword yang pertama. I will share you the first keyword is automate. Kata kunci yang pertama adalah automate. Saya ulangi sekali lagi. Untuk kata kunci yang pertama adalah automate. Baik, selanjutnya kita akan mendengarkan recording pemaparan dari ACCA, yaitu recording dari Ibu Dames Nurcheni dari ACCA Indonesia yang akan memperkenalkan about Certificate in Business Valuation. Mari kita tampilkan video dari Ibu Dames Nurcheni.
Selamat sore Bapak dan Ibu. Terima kasih atas kesempatannya untuk saya, Dames Nurcheni dari ACCA Indonesia. Di hari ini saya akan berbagi pemaparan terkait produk co-branding ACCA dan IAPI, yaitu Certificate in Business Valuation, atau yang biasa juga kami sebut dengan CBV. Izinkan saya menyampaikan presentasi ini dalam bahasa Indonesia, jadi harapannya agar menjadi lebih clear. Sebelum saya menjelaskan tentang CBV, perkenalkan saya juga untuk terkait ACCA terlebih dahulu. Jika Bapak dan Ibu sebelumnya pernah mendengar ACCA, sore ini saya akan perkenalkan sedikit lebih jauh tentang apa itu ACCA. ACCA adalah Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. Kami adalah the world's most forward-thinking professional accountancy body yang didirikan di Inggris di tahun 1904. ACCA merupakan global body yang semakin bertambah besar setiap harinya, dan saat ini sudah memiliki 227.000 members dan 544.000 students atau future members yang tersebar di 180 negara. ACCA memiliki kantor saat ini di 110 negara, salah satunya di Indonesia. Kantor perwakilan ACCA Indonesia mulai didirikan sejak tahun 2013. Dan hingga saat ini ACCA Global sudah bekerja sama dengan lebih dari 7.600 approved employers. Artinya mereka adalah perusahaan-perusahaan yang memang sudah menjadikan ACCA sebagai salah satu persyaratan untuk rekrutmen atau persyaratan untuk mendapatkan kenaikan jabatan atau bahkan untuk secondment, misalnya ke market yang lain. Approved employer juga memberikan support untuk ACCA members dan future members yang ada di perusahaan mereka, baik dalam bentuk financial maupun pemberian paid leave untuk mereka belajar dan mengikuti ujian ACCA. Lalu ACCA juga bekerja sama dengan other professional body. Di Indonesia kami bekerja sama dengan major national bodies, salah satunya adalah dengan IAPI, di mana kami secara rutin menyelenggarakan acara bersama IAPI, dan salah satunya adalah hari ini, di mana kita mengadakan acara co-branding untuk CBV batch kedua. Dan ini karena kami percaya, ACCA percaya bahwa akuntansi adalah profesi yang sangat penting. Dan itulah mengapa ACCA berkomitmen untuk selalu mengembangkan profesi akuntansi secara global. Business valuation merupakan proses umum dalam menentukan nilai ekonomi dari seluruh bisnis atau unit perusahaan. Tadi sudah dijelaskan dengan sangat menarik menurut saya oleh dua pembicara kita. CBV menawarkan practical guidance yang dijelaskan dengan lebih detail dan diperlukan dalam business valuation. Kami menyadari bahwa business valuation saat ini berkembang pesat dan berdasarkan informasi yang kami kumpulkan dari ACCA members globally, bahwa professional accountants saat ini dituntut untuk memiliki keahlian terkait business valuation, seiring dengan makin maraknya aktivitas merger and acquisition. CBV sendiri dilakukan secara online. Certificate Business Valuation dilakukan secara online dan dapat diselesaikan kira-kira dalam 20 jam. Dan tidak harus straight 20 jam ya Bapak Ibu, jadi bisa dikerjakan hari ini sejam, begitupun besok atau minggu depannya sejam dan selanjutnya. Totalnya terdapat 10 modul di dalamnya, termasuk latihan, soal pilihan ganda, dan case study. IAPI akan mengadakan 2 kali workshop setelah online learning selesai. Bapak dan Ibu sebagai participants akan mendapatkan akses ke CBV selama 6 bulan. Jadi sebenarnya bisa diselesaikan sampai 6 bulan. Kemudian Bapak dan Ibu sebagai participants akan mendapatkan sertifikat dengan 3 prestigious brands. Jadi dari ACCA, kemudian ada IAPI, dan ada asosiasi profesional dari Prancis, yaitu Conseil Supérieur Ordre des Experts Comptables. Jadi ada 3 brand nanti di dalam sertifikat business valuation yang akan Bapak Ibu ikuti. Kemudian CBV ini ditujukan untuk siapa saja? Sebenarnya untuk umum, khususnya untuk akuntan publik, akuntan profesional, lalu Bapak dan Ibu yang ingin meningkatkan kompetensi di bidang business valuation, juga Bapak dan Ibu yang sudah mungkin berkecimpung ya di bidang business valuation dan ingin menjadi globally certified. Kemudian benefit apa yang akan Bapak dan Ibu dapatkan ketika mengikuti ACCA IAPI CBV? Yang pertama, karena CBV ini bentuknya online dan on demand, jadi Bapak dan Ibu dapat mengerjakan dan menyesuaikan dengan aktivitas sehari-hari Bapak dan Ibu. Di ACCA, CBV dihitung sejumlah 40 hours of CPD, sehingga dengan hanya mengerjakan CBV, participants dapat memperoleh sebagian besar kebutuhan CPD poinnya dalam setahun dengan biaya yang cukup affordable. Kemudian, konten yang disampaikan dari CBV dibawakan dengan interaktif dan menarik. Dan dengan menjadi globally qualified, pastinya akan memberikan added value untuk Bapak dan Ibu. Dan yang terakhir, tapi tidak kalah penting adalah workshop yang akan disampaikan oleh IAPI akan melengkapi proses pembelajaran online CBV. Di mana melalui workshop tersebut, participants akan mendapatkan best practice dengan local environment. Selanjutnya adalah key learning objectives. Key learning objectives dari CBV adalah participants dapat menjelaskan perbedaan konteks penilaian dan pertimbangan yang harus dilakukan sebelum melakukan valuation atau penilaian. Kemudian participants dapat memberikan penjelasan dengan detail berbagai metode penilaian yang akan digunakan berdasarkan situasi dan kondisi. Lalu participants dapat menyediakan tools dan checklist untuk menuntun proses valuation dan dapat memberikan expert professional feedback kepada klien terkait valuation. Jadi selain dasar-dasar dan teori tentang business valuation, yang paling penting adalah teknik dalam mengaplikasikan the principles of business valuation akan dipelajari di CBV. Lalu kita akan masuk ke syllabus. Berikut ini adalah syllabus dari CBV. Di dalam co-branding produk ini, ACCA IAPI CBV, terdapat 10 modul dengan judul-judul sebagai berikut. Ada Context of Valuation, Strategic Analysis, Financial Analysis, Methods of Valuation, Asset-Based Valuation, Multiples-Based Valuations, Discounted Cash Flow-Based Valuation, Choice of Methods in Context, dan yang tidak kalah penting adalah application case study, kemudian reflection and resources. Kemudian setelah online course ini berakhir, akan ada business valuation workshop yang akan diadakan oleh IAPI sebanyak 2 kali. Sehingga participants akan mendapatkan full knowledge of business valuation dan dapat dinyatakan certified business valuation. Sekian pemaparan dari saya terkait CBV. Semoga dapat memberikan gambaran yang cukup terkait ACCA dan CBV. Dan untuk informasi terkait jadwal, biaya, dan hal-hal yang lebih detail akan disampaikan lebih lanjut setelah ini oleh tim IAPI. Terima kasih atas perhatiannya.
Baik, Terima kasih Bapak dan Ibu. Selanjutnya saya akan melanjutkan yang tadi telah dipaparkan oleh Mbak Dames dari Institut Akuntan Publik Indonesia. Kami akan memberitahukan atau menginformasikan beberapa hal. Bisa ditayangkan untuk layarnya. Halo. Baik, Certificate in Business Valuation. Di sini merupakan program co-branding IAPI dan ACCA, di mana pihak IAPI dan ACCA itu akan memberikan fasilitas seperti e-voucher login modul, Certificate Business Valuation, lalu akan mendapatkan juga Certificate in Business Valuation ACCA dan IAPI. Tentunya para peserta juga akan mendapatkan 5 SKP terstruktur dan 22 SKP tidak terstruktur. Dan juga pendaftaran masih kami buka untuk batch 3 dan berakhir pada tanggal 15 Juli 2021 pada pukul 17.00. Dan juga kita akan mulai untuk CBV batch 3 ini di tanggal 26 Juli 2021. Jadi Bapak dan Ibu bisa segera daftar. Lalu selanjutnya yang akan kami berikan di sertifikat CBV and ACCA ini, yaitu bisa ditampilkan. Di sini business valuation kita ketahui akan semakin berkembang dan sangat-sangat dibutuhkan oleh profesi akuntan dan akuntan publik, di mana akuntan dan akuntan publik dituntut untuk mampu dan memahami tentang fair value atau nilai wajar suatu bisnis. Dengan mengikuti program Certificate in Business Valuation IAPI ACCA, diharapkan peserta dapat menambah pengetahuannya dan kompetensinya di bidang business valuation. Dan juga siapa saja yang cocok untuk memiliki CBV, yaitu yang pertama tentunya para akuntan publik, akuntan profesional, dan siapapun atau masyarakat umum yang ingin menambah pengetahuannya dan kompetensinya di bidang Certificate in Business Valuation. Dan juga kami tidak lupa untuk menyampaikan bahwa anggota IAPI dapat berinvestasi sejumlah 3.500.000, untuk member ACCA dapat berinvestasi sebesar 3.300.000, akan mendapatkan diskon dari harga umum sebesar 100.000 yaitu 3.400.000, dan untuk umum investasinya adalah sejumlah 3.400.000. Baik, selanjutnya saya juga akan menjelaskan dengan bahasa Indonesia, mohon izin, mengenai tahap 2 dan tahap 3 CBV di dalam Institut Akuntan Publik Indonesia. Baik, CBV di dalam Institut Akuntan Publik Indonesia, yaitu kita melakukannya via Udemy, yang dimana informasi ini adalah untuk tahap 2 dan 3, yaitu yang pertama hanya peserta yang sudah menyelesaikan tahap 1 di website ACCA yang dapat mengikuti tahap selanjutnya. Lalu yang kedua, sebelum mengikuti tahap 2 dan 3, peserta yang telah menyelesaikan tahap 1 diwajibkan untuk konfirmasi dan melampirkan bukti penyelesaian tahap 1 berupa sertifikat yang diberikan oleh ACCA, serta menginformasikan alamat email yang terdaftar di Udemy melalui email kami, yaitu cbv@iapi.org.id dengan subjek email, batch yang diikuti, strip bukti penyelesaian tahap 1 CBV. Selanjutnya, CBV tahap 2 dan 3 dilaksanakan melalui platform Udemy. Untuk itu, dimohon peserta melakukan registrasi di akun Udemy melalui halaman yang sudah tertera di layar Bapak dan Ibu. Lalu selanjutnya, panduan pelaksanaan CBV tahap 2 juga dapat diakses melalui link yang sudah terlihat di layar Bapak dan Ibu. Dan juga kami informasikan kepada Bapak dan Ibu bahwa peserta CBV batch 1 wajib menyelesaikan tahap 2 dan 3, yaitu paling lambat 4 Agustus 2021. Sedangkan untuk peserta CBV batch 2 wajib menyelesaikan tahap 2 dan tahap 3, yaitu paling lambat di tanggal 12 Oktober 2021. Jadi untuk E-Sertifikat akan kami bagikan apabila peserta CBV sudah menyelesaikan tahap 1 yang untuk ACCA, tahap 2 dan tahap 3 untuk IAPI. Lalu selanjutnya, di sini kami akan sedikit menjelaskan mengenai panduan pelaksanaan CBV di IAPI tahap 2 dan 3 melalui Udemy. Yang pertama, CBV tahap 2, yaitu melalui pembelajaran mandiri, dan tahap 3 melalui post-test. Dapat diakses melalui platform Udemy. Lalu yang kedua, peserta juga diharuskan untuk membuat akun terlebih dahulu pada Udemy dengan mengakses laman yang ada di layar Bapak dan Ibu jika belum mempunyai akun Udemy. Oke, next. Setelah berhasil membuat akun atau sebelumnya sudah mempunyai akun Udemy, peserta dapat menyampaikan alamat email yang digunakan kepada IAPI melalui email cbv@iapi.or.id. Selanjutnya, setelah admin CBV menerima info email peserta, admin akan memproses dan peserta akan menerima email dari Udemy sebagai akses untuk mengikuti PPL CBV tahap selanjutnya di Udemy. Dan selanjutnya akan terlihat seperti gambar di bawah ini. Ada tag discourse, dan next, peserta akan diarahkan ke halaman awal Udemy, lalu akan klik login, dan lakukan login sesuai akun yang telah dibuat. Selanjutnya, setelah berhasil login, tinggal klik go to the course pada PPL CBV. Next, selanjutnya, setelah menyelesaikan seluruh rangkaian tersebut, pastikan progres sudah mencapai 100% sebagai syarat untuk penerbitan sertifikat. Lalu, admin akan melakukan pengecekan progres peserta tersebut, dan bagi peserta yang telah menyelesaikan seluruh rangkaian pembelajaran, E-Sertifikat akan di-email ke masing-masing peserta. Dan apabila peserta mengalami kendala dalam mengikuti program CBV ini, dapat menghubungi admin kami di 0812-9287-8707, lalu di CS kami yang kedua di 0811-8402-405, dan juga bisa melalui email kami cbv@iapi.or.id dengan subjek email CBV Udemy. Baik, sekian dari saya mengenai CBV IAPI ACCA di tahap 2 dan 3. Untuk selanjutnya, saya akan membacakan kata kunci yang kedua. Ladies and gentlemen, I will share the second keyword is service. Bapak dan Ibu, saya akan menjelaskan atau menerangkan untuk kata kunci yang kedua adalah service. Satu lagi, untuk kata kunci yang kedua adalah service. Baik, terima kasih. Kita akan memasuki pada sesi tanya-jawab yang tentunya akan dipandu oleh Ibu Hani Karunia, Head of ACCA Indonesia. Baik, kepada Ibu Hani Karunia, waktu dan tempat kami persilahkan.
Oke, terima kasih Mbak Asri. Oke, sebenarnya mungkin sebelumnya saya juga ingin mengingatkan tentang waktu, karena sebenarnya ini kita 90 menit sudah jam 5, tapi nggak apa-apa karena kita ingin juga memberikan keleluasaan pada para speaker atau panelis kita pada hari ini. Ya, itu mungkin nanti kita akan lewat 15 menit ya dari waktu yang sebelumnya kita perkirakan. Oke. Pertanyaan pertama dari Pak Budiman. Ini ditujukan kepada Pak Denny. Pak Denny, in your professional perspective, do Indonesia will be having the digital asset market like IDX instead only to regularize it under Bapeti? Ini cuma pertanyaan personal opinion berarti ini Pak. Tapi ya with your professional perspective ya. Gitu. Mungkin Bapak bisa.
Okay, please allow me to answer in bahasa ya Ibu.
Boleh ya Pak.
Okay, and some of English. Pak Budiman, apakah Indonesia akan memiliki digital asset market? Iya Pak, dari berita yang saya dengarkan begitu Pak, tetapi saat ini lebih banyak mengatur untuk currency market Pak. Dan di Indonesia tentunya Bank Indonesia sudah menyiapkan infrastrukturnya, ini rencananya kan ada Central Bank Digital Currency. Kemudian saat ini ada beberapa crypto exchanges yang mungkin ada 5 atau 8 crypto exchanges yang legal dan sudah terdaftar di Bapeti dan melaksanakan aktivitas transaksi crypto aset. Dan juga bukan hanya cryptocurrency tapi juga digital asset Pak, karena ada di dalam situ kelas asetnya, kriptonya ada yang untuk NFT juga ada, ya. Kemudian seperti BitTorrent di mana dia adalah kripto untuk data exchange juga ada. Jadi bukan melulu currency. Begitu, Bu Ani. Terima kasih.
Oke, terima kasih. Mungkin selanjutnya saya akan pilih pertanyaan dari audiens yang lain. Oke, yang ada baik ada namanya itu Pak Dedi dari Chrome ya mungkin ya. Now, how to calculate the value of digital assets on a certain date, where the value is always changing and not same in every exchange. For example, Coinbase. I think I'd like to ask Miss Jenny on this. Yeah, Miss Jenny, time is yours. How to calculate the value of digital assets on a certain date, where the value is always changing and not same in every exchange.
Yeah, so thank you, Hanny. So I'm going to answer that in the context of a digital currency rather than all digital assets, because I think the term digital asset is it covers tokens, and as I've said, they're security-like instruments, and that's a whole different world. For me, if we're talking about a digital currency, there are a number of exchanges, and it would be the same for any fiat currency. How do I value my dollar-yen trade or my dollar-sterling cable trade at the end of a business day? So we normally have an imposed cutoff of 5 p.m. UK, for example, cutoff, and we will choose a number of reputable references for the instrument, and very liquid marketplaces, very transparent, where we ourselves would look for price referencing, and we would choose 2 or 3 reference exchanges or trading platforms, and we would take the average of the 3, for example, at that cutoff date, and we would not cherry pick. So if you are choosing for currency pairs, various exchanges, then you need to use those consistently, and you need to choose the time slot consistently, and then make sure they meet your criteria for transparency and valuation. So liquidity, the robustness of that platform and exchange, KYC, AML standards, protocols, etc. And then we would generally try to find 2 or 3, and we would take an average of those 2 or 3, and we would use that consistently. That would be my guidance. I spent the early part of my career as a product controller in the middle office. So I'm very, very experienced, sadly, in these challenges of what will be acceptable to our auditors and our stakeholders. I hope that helps.
Yeah, so this is from me. So because I'm also curious, so is there also like a supply and demand type of thing that was actually influence this value at a certain moment, or like a real time? Do you think that also affect the value?
Well, so we would have an agreed policy of how we would value, and we would include in that policy the reference exchanges or trading platforms or execution venues that we would refer to for the valuation. If we feel that, let's say, it's a month end or a year end, like a more of a period reference point rather than just a normal daily one, if we feel that there has been post cut-off events, then we would go back and adjust our mark-to-market valuation if we felt it was a material new information had come out subsequent to the reporting date. Then we would be able to go back and adjust that valuation that we had taken. But we try to say this is what something was worth at this point in time, and that's a fact. And the week later, the currency may have moved dramatically, but we're reporting at that time. So it really depends on whether it's a month end or a year end or a normal cut off. But your policy is your policy, and that's your at that point in time.
All right. Thank you, Jenny. So I guess next question, maybe you can scroll down again. Trying to find maybe someone from a different company. I see a lot of the same people here. Now, Jumadi, maybe this one from Jumiadi Au from Unimed Medan. Okay, this one maybe Pak Denny can try is in bahasa. Bagaimana mengukur dan menilai dari aset yang dimiliki oleh suatu entitas bisnis dalam bentuk emas digital atau investasi digital pada suatu firm atau lembaga investment.
Ya, terima kasih. Ini Bapak Jumiadi ya. Iya. Terima kasih. Jadi memang seperti yang tadi disampaikan pada saat sesi presentasi kami, bahwa memang si issuer dari digital asset itu bisa menyampaikan bahwa investasi ini di-peg atau investasinya berdasarkan jumlah US dollar. Itu stable coin, konsep dari stable coin. Seperti USDT, USDC, dia adalah stable coin atau URX. Kemudian ada juga yang bentuk emas, seperti kalau setahu saya yang di Indonesia diperdagangkan itu adalah BTG, Bitcoin Gold. Ada juga yang silver juga ada. Dan memang di presentasi tadi kami menyampaikan bahwa kita tidak bisa meyakini sepenuhnya bahwa nilainya ini di-peg atau berdasarkan atau didasarkan pada naik turunnya nilai emas atau nilai perak atau nilai fiat currency tadi. Karena this is merely seperti yang Jenny sampaikan tadi, ini adalah seberapa rela orang membayar atas nilai yang ditentukan. Jadi menurut saya this is a purely market value ya, buy and sell, how much you ask and how much you can bid. Jadi memang kalau ingin mengukur dan menilai aset, tentunya harus dilihat nilai fair value-nya berapa, dan kita mesti ada satu panduan. Seandainya di Indonesia, saran saya ambil nilai tengah dari beberapa trading aplikasi yang sudah legal, yang diakui oleh properti, ambil nilai tengahnya, catat nilai hari itu berapa, catat at cost. Dan nanti seiring dengan berjalannya waktu, Pak Jumaidi, Bapak Ibu sekalian, mesti melihat pergerakannya. Dan yang paling penting, investasi ini dinyatakan sebagai apa? Apakah ini memang akan diniatkan diperdagangkan? Kalau iya, maka harus dicatat nilai naik turunnya itu sebagai unrealized gain or loss, itu tiap hari itu naik turun. Atau kalau memang tidak diputuskan, maka bisa diperlakukan sebagai intangible asset yang indefinite life tadi, tetapi memang setiap periode mungkin setahun bisa 2 kali, 3 kali dilakukan impairment test. Karena seperti kita lihat sekarang, kondisi market sangat volatile. Sejak 4 bulan terakhir ini, nilai market dari digital currency yang diperdagangkan di Indonesia itu dan global menurun lebih kurang 50% in value, tapi bukan dalam nilai transaksi. Itu yang bisa saya sampaikan, Bu Ani. Terima kasih.
Berarti hampir mirip juga, ada acuan terhadap referensi ya. Tadi Bapak bilang dari either the same ataupun yang sejenis dari beberapa aplikasi yang mungkin bisa dipercaya ya, tadi Bapak bilang.
Ya. Kalau di Indonesia, maka saran saya ikut yang diregulasikan oleh Bapepti. Karena itu the most secure and reliable cara untuk kita mempunyai keyakinan tentang bahwa nilainya benar. Because it's legal.
Alright. Terima kasih. Selanjutnya mungkin bisa scroll ke bawah. Kita masih ada sekitar 5 menit lagi. Ini ada Ali dari BAMS atau BAMS. Oke. Oh, tapi ini mungkin kita kurang relate ya. Mohon maaf sekali karena ini ingin meng-quote dari follower lainnya yang mana kita nggak dalam tempatnya untuk memberikan pendapat tersebut ya. Oke, mungkin dari APHN Doko ya. So maybe I can ask Jenny on this. Can you scroll up a little bit so we can really see the full question? Because somehow it's kind of how to audit the real value of cryptocurrency, Jenny, and how the recording and calculating on that particular digital assets in this is cryptocurrency. This question will be the last question for the day.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Well, that's a great question to end on because it's the heart of the matter. And in the question is the challenge. What is the real value of a cryptocurrency? And as I said in my presentation, the value of something is what a willing buyer is prepared to pay and a willing seller is prepared to accept. So if we're talking about digital currencies like Bitcoin, where there is, to be challenged, no real underlying intrinsic fundamental value, then you could argue there is no value. It's merely a mechanism for exchange, and it's what people believe it to be. So I think the only way to do this is we have to have, for a digital currency that is untethered, is not a stable coin, we have to believe that the market believes there's a value. And that is what people are prepared to pay for it and wish to sell it for. I struggle, if I'm honest, as I've said, with believing that the digital currencies that are not stable coins have a growth inherent value as an investment value. I struggle that Bitcoin goes up and is worth more when it's, for me, I don't believe in the artificiality of that value. I much prefer the concept of stable coins that are tethered. So I do struggle with it, but nevertheless, people believe there is a value to Bitcoin, and so we have to subscribe to that emperor's new clothes, in my belief, and therefore we have to subscribe a value to it. So the only way that you can do that is by using the fair market value principles of any other asset or liability, which is, what is the trading price? What is the price on those transparent exchanges and trading platforms? Is a willing buyer prepared to pay, and a willing seller in an orderly transaction willing to accept? And whether or not you then apply a haircut for liquidity, or depending on the size of the transaction and the holding, or just a general, I guess I'd call it a conservative haircut, is entirely up to the holder on the balance sheet on that date. But is it real? Well, if someone's prepared to pay you for it, then I guess it is real. If it's a stable coin and it's pinned to an underlying asset or liability, then that's very different, because I think you can see real intrinsic value. But we have to assume that we are able to evidence in a open, transparent market to willing participants that's orderly, that there are robust protocols around wallet, KYC, AML, etc., that market price is the real value. And all of those challenges that I mentioned have to be audited the way you would any other accessible asset or liability, in that is the robustness of the exchange, the transparency of the participants. So because if you can't see who's playing in that market, then how do you know they're really going to execute? So I think it is challenging. I think there will be some noise as this journey evolves. But my sort of concluding comments to my slides were that we should treat digital assets and specifically digital currencies with the same rigor, the same standards, and the same approach that we would a fiat or a commodity currency. And that means the same auditing standards should apply. for digital currency. So, around the robustness of the exchange, the trading platform, etc. So that would be my view, because for me, I struggle to believe in the real intrinsic value of some digital currencies, for sure.
Okay. Does that sum up your answer, Jenny?
I think it does. I'm very happy to debate it, but that does sum up my answer. And it was a great question. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions, Abndoko. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, that is our last question. And perhaps, Pak Denny, if you want to give any closing remarks from me, we really valued all the audience attention as well. I know there are still some questions that we cannot answer one by one, obviously, but if the mungkin nanti dari Mbak Asri dan timnya summarize questions, bisa mungkin nanti dikirim ya kalau yang memang kira-kira relevan pada Jenny nanti beliau akan mendirect masing-masing questions-nya. Tapi memang ini menarik sekali Pak Denny kali ini webinarnya. Sangat-sangat penting juga karena memang momennya juga lagi happening sekarang. Banyak perusahaan-perusahaan besar juga sudah mulai menerima cryptocurrency sebagai salah satu metode transactions ataupun penggantinya dari cash ya. So pasti mau nggak mau ke depannya ini para auditor, para akuntan harus bisa menggrasp the knowledge on the valuation of the digital assets itself. Karena pada awalnya ini sampai sekarang pun yang menjadi bikin rumit itu kan tidak ada seperti kesamaan prinsip ya secara global dalam hal mungkin dari tadi seperti Jenny bilang untuk penilaiannya gitu kan, ataupun dari segi auditnya, bahkan makanya dia bilang she should actually think that ini harus diregard sebagai dengan menggunakan auditing principle yang sama seperti yang lainnya gitu untuk dalam hal aset ya. Mungkin Pak Denny ingin menambahkan.
Thank you, Ibu Hani. I'd like to add on the points from Jenny earlier that in my opinion, Jenny, I agree with you. It's a very risky class of asset. And also, but I don't know why a lot of people, many of people still consider this as has a real value. I don't know, but I think as we see, we witness in the history of the world itself, many new things considered to be risky and unreliable, but if they evolve, then more and more people accept it, then it become mainstream. For instance, like electric car, and then new technology. Any new technology will face this, and of course it's high risk. And I imagine this situation right now, it's like a gold rush era in US gold rush in 1800s. So Jenny, thank you very much for your time. I wish we can have more discussion, maybe next time if you have time, or if Indonesian can go to London again, then I hopefully we can meet there.
Iya Pak,
Thank you.
kita ikut timnya.
Yeah, with Wani also. Thank you, Wani.
Terima kasih. Yeah, Jenny, thank you again for your participation. I guess I'm also still the same with you in terms of having the faith on the on this digital currency, but also I think if the government or the regulations is stepping up, it actually add a lot more stability. I think, yeah, if there is more regulations that's being as a foundational elements to it. So as of now, there is nothing that I think it's really regulated. So that also makes the instability elements itself from the whole concept. But anyway, are we going to take some pictures before we leave? I guess since you're still here, so we should take a group picture, Denny, before we forget.
Okay, please, Asri, please guide us, Asri.
Ya, Mbak Asri.
Oke, terima kasih Bu Hani. Please.
Foto Asri.
Yeah. Okay, please turn on the camera for the all panelists, and we will take a picture. Mas Maksus. Sorry. Dalam hitungan 1, 2, 3 ya, Mas Maksus.
Ya, silakan.
Please guide for 1, 2, 3, Mas Maksus.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Okay, thank you Bu Hani, thank you Pak Denny, and thank you Miss Jenny.
Sama-sama semuanya. Thank you all. Stay safe, Jenny. Thank you,
Thank
Mbak
you.
Asri.
Thank you, Jenny.
Audience
makasih,
Bu.
Bapak Ibu sekalian.
Ya, terima kasih. Thank you, Jenny. Have a great
Keep safe,
day.
everybody.
Thank you. Keep safe. Thank you. Stay healthy. Bye-bye.
Ya.
Baik, Bapak dan Ibu, kami lanjutkan kembali. Saya akan membacakan beberapa ketentuan untuk mendapatkan sertifikat acara kami hari ini. Baik, untuk ketentuan yang pertama, yaitu peserta yang join di dalam webinar ini melalui YouTube berhak mendapatkan sertifikat dengan ketentuan sebagai berikut. Peserta wajib mengikuti rangkaian acara Joint Webinar IAPI ACCA sampai dan selesai, lalu mengisi survei setelah kegiatan Joint Webinar IAPI ACCA melalui link, lalu memasukkan 3 kalimat kunci yang tepat sesuai tanggal pelaksanaan Joint Webinar hari ini. Link hanya berlaku 2 jam setelah rangkaian Joint Webinar ACCA IAPI selesai. Lalu sertifikat dapat diunduh pada tanggal 26 Juli pada link berikut. Dan juga kami tidak lupa, peserta yang merupakan anggota IAPI wajib mengupload sertifikat yang telah diunduh pada akun IAPI peserta melalui pengajuan SKP tidak terstruktur. Baik, Bapak dan Ibu, sebelum webinar ini berakhir, izinkan saya untuk membacakan kata kunci yang ketiga. Baik, untuk kata kunci yang ketiga adalah function. For the third keyword is function. Sekali lagi saya ulangi, kata kunci yang ketiga adalah function. Baik, terima kasih. Dan juga sekali lagi kami ucapkan terima kasih kepada Miss Jenny Note dan Pak Denny Purhadianto atas pemaparannya. Dan juga saya ucapkan terima kasih kepada Ibu Hani yang telah memandu acara sesi tanya jawab pada webinar hari ini. Dan juga kami atas manajemen eksekutif IAPI, mohon maaf apabila ada kesalahan atau kekurangan di dalam pelaksanaan webinar hari ini. Dan juga terima kasih atas partisipasinya. Dan apabila peserta mengalami kendala di dalam webinar ini, dapat menghubungi CS kami di 0812-928707 atau CS2 di 0811-8402-405. Sekali lagi kami ucapkan terima kasih. Sampai jumpa di acara webinar kami selanjutnya. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sehat untuk Bapak dan Ibu.
Waalaikumsalam. Bapak Ibu sekalian, terima kasih sudah berpartisipasi. Yuk. Sudah, izin live ya. Terima kasih.
Ya, Pak.